I think what it is that I just love being in the forest. Well, good morning. Here we are, deep in Epping Forest. I've just parked the car and I thought I'd have a little wander around in this area that on previous visits I found some fallow deer. So I'm hoping to get a glimpse of a fallow deer or something like that, hopefully get a bit of footage. And there's also the possibility, I've seen in this area before, muntjac, smallest deer in Britain, so we could get a muntjac deer as well. Also, a while ago I did have a pretty good view over near here of a buzzard, so you know, we could see all sorts of things. A bit of luck, sparrowhawk, buzzard, fallow deer, muntjac, I'd be happy with that. Maybe a woodpecker or two. So let's have a little wander around and see what we can see. I've just heard a great spotted woodpecker up here, but it's flown a bit further along. Maybe I'll just see if I can listen out for it. With deer, I find if you can move really quietly and slowly, you've got a chance of seeing them before they see you. And if you do that, then there's a chance of getting some good photographs. Can you see any deer? You need to keep your eyes peeled. You need to keep a sharp lookout. You need to walk like a ninja, avoiding the twigs. Well, I've been out for an hour and a half or so far. No luck. So I've been creeping around, trying to keep as quiet as possible, being mindful of the wind direction, trying to keep a low profile, but so far, no luck. The other day I was out here looking for fallow deer, but I didn't see any, and I came back another day and still didn't see any. There were a few signs of droppings which from fallow deer, but not much. But just yesterday I found a lovely southern hawker dragonfly, which was a female, which was laying eggs in a pond, but also around the edges of the pond in the undergrowth, and I thought that was very interesting behaviour. I've seen a lot of these scrapings in the ground where fallow deer have. I don't know whether they're marking their territory or making a statement to other deer or something, but yeah, a lot of this. They're around here somewhere, but the question is, where? Well, it's 3 days later. I had no luck. I had no luck that day, or the next day, or the next day. But today, I kind of scouting out different areas near to where I knew the deer had been last year. And I've just, a few minutes ago, in the woods just here, I saw a couple of female fallow deer. They did see me, but I didn't startle them. They just looked. I kept absolutely still. They just looked and then looked at me and then just carried on wandering through the forest. So I'm going to sit here for a little while and be quiet and see if they appear again. But I'm so glad that I've found the place where they're hanging out this year, and hope to get a bit of video. There's nothing I like more than sneaking through the woods and finding deer, wild deer, not tame or human friendly, but wild deer that are skittish and difficult to get near to. I just love being quiet and stealthy and doing my very best not to disturb them, but at the same time get a couple of photos and hopefully a bit of film with this thing. Well, I've seen these deer a few more times, but I'm trying to keep a distance so I don't freak them out too much. They're aware of me, but because I'm keeping a distance and I'm keeping quiet and still, they're not too bothered as long as I don't get too close. So the trick is to be close enough to get some photographs, but not scare them. So it may be a question of kind of skirting around, finding a spot and hope that they come in my direction. They're quite relaxed at the moment, and I want them to stay that way. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the real challenges of woodland photography is the high dynamic range. The human eye has a much greater dynamic range than even the best cameras. So the challenge when you're photographing in the woods is how do you manage the extreme shadows and the highlights? How do you manage your photography when you're going to get lots of underexposed areas and lots of overexposed areas? And I think in lots of ways it's a bit like macro photography, where you have to make that compromise with depth of field and accept that you're going to have a lot of the photograph out of focus. And in the woodland, I think you have to accept that you're going to either have very overexposed areas or very underexposed areas, and use that artistically to to draw attention to the subject. So that in the same way that we use a narrow depth of field to direct the viewer's eye toward the subject and the point of interest in the photograph, you might have a beautiful woman, and you use a very small depth of field to blow out the other people and just focus on the one person that you want people to look at in your photograph. And that's what photographers have been doing for years with depth of field, with having out of focus elements and very sharply in focus elements to focus the viewer's eye. But I think we can also do that with exposure. So we can use exposure to make a lot of the picture less interesting, as it were, dark or in shadow, and then the areas that are lit or well exposed will draw the viewer's attention. And that's something that I've really been thinking about and experimenting with, and I quite like the results. I quite like the way that you can use both focus and exposure to control or direct the viewer's eye. So I'll show you some photographs, see what you think, see whether you think I've been able to do this successfully. But the other thing I would say, I quite like dark, moody forests, because to me the forest, particularly now where the leaves are all still on the trees, forests are dark places, and I want my pictures to evoke the feeling and to evoke the atmosphere of the environment. And the atmosphere and environment here is one where there's not a lot of light on the floor, and there's not a lot of light. So I quite like using really seriously underexposing pictures, and that's what I've been doing. Not just by one or two stops, but by a lot more than that often. And because you've got to remember, you see, that the camera's autofocus system, the camera's exposure system, it doesn't know what your subject, just like the autofocus system doesn't. Your exposure system in the camera doesn't know what your subject is. And if you're taking a picture of a dungeon, then the camera's trying to make it like a standard exposure. It's trying to make it, it would try to match the exposure to the same exposure level that it would have if you were taking a picture of a football match on a sunny day outside, the dungeon and the football match. So you as the photographer have to think about how you're going to manipulate exposure to appropriately to the subject. However, maybe they will develop cameras in the future that they're able to identify what your subject is. But at the moment, matrix metering or other kinds of metering, spot metering, whatever. It's all, well, spot metering not so much, but certainly matrix metering is just taking an average of what's in the frame and trying to normalize it. And that's where, in the forest, I think serious underexposure is the way to go. Generally, But anyway, so I've enjoyed that. Haven't had as much time to do as much macro as I would have liked, but I was really glad to get that tiny bit of footage and a couple of pictures of the southern hawker dragonfly laying eggs, and it was nice, also lovely to catch up with these fallow deer. It took me 3 days to find them. They'd moved from where I normally find them, but it's good to see that there's a good herd of them in these woods, and I look forward to more photographic encounters with them throughout the rest of this year. So that's all from me today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you very much for watching. See you next time.